Now, the salary to be received by the incoming host of the Late Late Show is, I'm told, at the borderline of what should be permissible in a public service broadcaster. Independent Senator Ronan Mullen has said. Senator Mullen was speaking after his broadcasting restriction of salaries bill passed its first stage in the Seanad yesterday. The bill, the first ever legislation to tackle the issue of top salaries, the national broadcaster will receive its second stage hearing in the Seanad on Wednesday the 5th of July. And Senator Ronan Mullen is on the line. Ronan, good morning.
Good morning, and thanks for having me on your programme, Dick.
Good morning, and thanks for joining us. Is this a coincidence that we're talking about this now with something else that is going on? When did you first conceive this?
Yeah, it's certainly not legislation that I dreamed up, since the most recent controversy started. I back in 2019, I called for the top salaries in RTE, particularly the celebrity salaries, that they would be pegged to public service pay scales. And I did that because there has been disquiet and concern for a long time about the excessive salaries being paid by what is, in the end, a taxpayer-funded broadcaster. Yes, there are commercial activities. Yes, there is sponsorship and advertising. But the licence fee is a huge proportion of RTE's income. And while that is the situation, then any use of its money by RTE is affecting the taxpayer. And we've heard arguments over the years that, we need to keep our top talent, we'll lose them, to other places, etc. I don't think the media market is that big. Yeah, sure, we were all very proud of Terry Wogan and Graham Norton and those who go abroad. But, we can afford to pay our top talent less, and we should be paying them less. And what we've seen, I think, in recent days is an organisation that has lost touch with reality, that has believed its own propaganda and forgot its obligations to people, even to the point where they appear to have been concealing their contractual arrangements from the public. So I suppose, having wanted to do this since 2019 and waited for the government to do something, I have been looking at, how do you frame or how do you craft legislation like this, since some of the salaries are employee salaries, or people directly on, even like contract or on contract of service with pension benefits and all that, and then others are kind of external contractors. So what my legislation does is it says, howsoever the contract with the person working at the corporation. This applies to RTE and TG Cathar as licence fee funded organisations, the public broadcaster. Howsoever the contract is set up, it cannot exceed the salary received by a government minister, the Minister for Communications. Now that's about 193, I think, €1,000. Some people might say that's still too high when you factor in pension benefits that go with the public service. I'm open to that argument, but this is the first time that there has been an attempt to have a cap here. The legislation, by the way, would also require RTE or TG, as the case may be, to publish on a website any individual getting a salary in excess of that of a member of Dáil Éireann, which is €107,000 thereabouts. And the legislation provides that it will be an offence to knowingly cause inaccurate information to go out about salaries. It would be an offence to breach the requirements to stick to the cap, to publish the salaries in excess of Dáil membership, and also the legislation also has provisions that says that it should be in a contract of anybody involved in news or current affairs or other material that they don't express their personal views on issues as well. So it's not just dealing with the cap on salaries and the need for transparency. That's the central part of the bill, but it also provides for a greater measure of accountability as well. I think over the years, RTE and some of its leading lights have really taken liberties with the public in that they have very often used their platform to communicate their own views directly or indirectly.
Is that the real reason, Ronan, that you're bringing it forward?
No, I mean, as I said, back in 2019, I have been quite vocal on this issue of accountability. I've always, had an interest in, I suppose, accountability for taxpayers' money, and I think this is a particularly bad case of a lack of accountability that we're seeing in these days. But this is legislation that tries to do certain things that I think need to be done. The big challenge for me is to get the government to take an interest in this legislation, say, yeah, we'll run with this, we'll give this time, and I'm very open to amendments at committee stage. For example, one journalist interviewing me this morning said, surely that's too low, 197,000. Won't you lose talent and so on? And the very next interview I did with a local radio station said, are you crazy? That salary is still far in excess of what most people working in the media are getting, the average journalist salary in the private sector. And
well,
so
I suppose that person, maybe I'd echo with that as well, that maybe you can turn your attention to, some sort of better model for local independent radio, which doesn't have, an audience equivalent to the whole 26 counties, that may be public service broadcasting within that.
That's true, and I mean, you guys know more than I do about the realities of running a media organisation and about the costs and the levels of income. I think what we see in RTE are that people were insulated from some of those realities, to judge by not just the sweetheart deals with some of the top paid celebrities, but also the slush funds that we heard about yesterday, and the use, again, it's the indirect use of taxpayers' money. It seems to have been very cavalier.
Okay, well, let's go back on a couple of points there. You say limit this at 195,000 or so for the limit. Patrick Healty is 250 grand, which is different than Pat Kenny was in the 960 grand or something with the radio programme at some stage. And Ryan Tubridy, I think we can safely say about 550 grand, and that was above the published figure. But at the same time, the people on the bigger salaries within RTE are far more entertaining than some of the TDs, and maybe we've too many TDs and senators too. And there's even talk of having more of them, and they'll be getting all this money. But you know what I mean? Don't the celebrities who bring in advertising from the corporate sector, who can pay this money, don't they deserve in a meritocracy to be compensated for that?
Well, look, you're right. There's always a debate, and there should always be a debate about how TDs and senators indeed are paid, and whether we're actually giving value for money to the taxpayer. But I could have just as easily, and I did actually consider saying, well, instead of pegging it to a minister's salary, we'll peg it to a certain level of civil service. For example, if I were to peg it to the assistant sec-gen of a civil service department, that would start off at about €154,000. And some people have suggested to me, maybe that's, when you factor in then the public service pension benefits that would go with a salary like that, then maybe that's probably what the top salary should be. And I'm open to those kind of arguments. Yeah, there'll always be an argument that, if you have some really talented person, that maybe you'll get even more by way of sponsorship from an organisation that's sponsoring the programme. But it's impossible to measure that, and that kind of calculus is wide open for abuse, because in the end, we are a small media market. If a particular big name goes off somewhere else in the morning, are we really saying that sponsors will be no longer interested in sponsoring the programme?
I don't know. Craig Doyle is doing well on ITV. Craig Doyle from Enniskerry here has gone over to ITV to replace Philip Schofield. So,
And that's the market. And as I said, it's maybe a very good thing if you have, some of our Irish talented being tempted away from our shores. As I said, we were all very proud of Terry Wogan back in the day. That is the market, and it's not just in the area of broadcasting that you would have people tempted abroad to take advantage of maybe better conditions that might be available in bigger countries. If that is the case, the point is this, it comes back to this is taxpayers' money. There's an awful lot of it going into RTE, and we now know, if we didn't already know, it isn't just in the area of the salaries being paid to the top talent that they've been so flourishing. As I said, the amount of money being spent on entertainment and all the rest of it.
Okay, which is there to be sorted.
Of the private sector.
I take your point, but Centre Parks have pulled out from sponsoring the Ryan Tubridy show, and the RT is going to lose 300,000. That's not taxpayers' money. It's essentially from the licence fee. It was what that programme was generating. So that was a hell of a lot of money in a year. So just to place that one on record, but I wanted to ask you one particular question, and when you in a way called into question maybe some of the editorial integrity of some of the broadcasters in RTE over the last while, I don't want to name anybody, but are there instances in mind that you have?
Yeah, well, I'll give you an example. During the Biden visit, you had absolutely gushing coverage from RTE. And we had at one point on Morning Ireland somebody saying, oh, it's a bit schmaltzy, but utterly decent, Now that is editorialising. I don't care how much of a feel-good factor there was about the Biden visit in some quarters, and it was very good for the country in lots of ways. But it is not the business of a professional news journalist to suggest to us all that Joe Biden is utterly decent. He's a politician in our country, boosting his own electoral chances, among other things. I don't want to be told by a journalist whether he's decent or not. I want to be told what he said yesterday and what the people who are for what he said think and what those who are against what he think. So that's an example. There are others who have, as you said, it's difficult to give examples without, and it's not fair when they're not there to defend themselves. But there are others who have been found to be in breach, for example, of the broadcasting standard. The BAI found one very prominent presenter out on at least 3 occasions for editorialising in different ways. So this legislation, there are already codes, by the way, in that area, and already duties of broadcasters. They're not always followed. What this basically does is it should be in the contract of each individual that you have to keep your personal views out of things, and there should be sanctions that the organisation is in a position to apply if the compliance committee that already exists under the Broadcasting Act finds that there have been breaches. So basically it's just tightening up on accountability in that area as well. Okay, well, the ones I know stick to the rules at least. But anyway, maybe I don't move in greater circles. I say more stick to the rules than don't, to be honest with you, but it's the few who are taking liberties with the taxpayer, All
right, we'll watch the progress of your proposal. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you,
Ronan Mullen.